Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Male Perspective. I am your host, Lana Reid, and today with me I have Dr. Clete Bulach, and I want to thank him for taking time to hang out with me today. Time is something that is very valuable. Once you give it, you can't give it back. So I want everybody to know I appreciate every moment that you give me. So thank you for hanging out with me. And how are you doing today?
It's a pleasure being on your show, Lana, and
Oh.
I'm looking forward to our conversation.
All righty. And where am I speaking to you from? Where are you at?
I'm in Georgia, just
Georgia.
west of Atlanta,
Okay, awesome.
living on a golf course and enjoying life.
Well, boy, it must be a rough life.
It is.
Just terrible. Awesome. So one of the things that really kind of popped out at me when I got your email about coming on the show today, you mentioned that two key areas where males tend to have weaknesses are one, levels of openness and trust, and then the 5 communication skills. So me being the nosy, curious female that I am, I want to know what the 5 communication skills are and what is this openness and trust that men struggle with?
Okay. Well, I did my doctoral dissertation on openness and trust back in 1970s,
Mm-hmm.
and openness has 2 dimensions. Um, Many males are open on one dimension and not so open on the other. The one dimension is telling. Many males tell people what they think. The other dimension is listening. And they're weak on the listening dimension, just like I was. I was a school superintendent, a principal, a teacher, and it was my role to tell people what they had to do. And as a parent of 4 kids, I tell the kids what needs to be done. But when it came to listening, I wasn't always open. And that's a big mistake. I've often been asked, and I've done hundreds of these talk shows, what is the one thing in life that you would tell people that they need to improve on? And it's listening. Because listening is a human behavior. And when you listen to someone, you convey that you care, that you're open, that you trust them, and you want a relationship. Now, when you tell people what they need to know, it's you are the one who's in control. And you get into the other factor that males tend to screw up on is control. Okay.
Okay.
There are 9 forms of power. 9 forms.
Is this is this like what is that book? 48 Laws of Power? Is it similar to that?
I've not read that book.
Oh, okay. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Control, power, and we talk about how much we got 30 minutes, right?
Yes.
Okay. We got the 5 communication skills that we're going to come back to.
Okay.
Let me deal with power for a minute here.
I'm taking notes too.
There are 5 basic needs that all people have. Okay.
Okay.
Everybody wants to be safe. Everybody wants to be alive. They don't want to be fearful. Okay. That's number 1. Number 2. And this goes back to the philosophers of the 18th and 19th century. Okay. You can get on the web and look it up. The second one says, yeah, you're right. That's true. That's why people behave the way they do. The second thing is they want to be happy. Everybody wants moments of happiness. Life with no happiness is no life. And then Nietzsche comes along, late 19th century philosopher. And you can get on the web and look this up. And he quotes the other people and says, yeah, you're right. People want to be freedom from fear. They want to be alive. And they want to be happy. But there's one other thing that's more important. He says it's power. He says people want power. With power, you get control. With control, you can control what's happening to you and to the people that you're associated with. And in chapter 4 of book number 1, I describe the 9 forms of power. And I won't go into those here, but I'll just run those quickly by you. 5 of the forms of power are freeing forms, which males tend not to use. Okay, and here they are. Information is power, right? Personality is power, right? You, you're a very charming person. I can just tell from talking with you that you've got a good personality. And when you ask people to do things, they say, "Oh, yeah, Lana, I'll do that for you." Personality is power. But when you ask, they're free. You don't have to do it. Expertise is when you demonstrate how to do something, which is what teachers do day in and day out in every classroom across the United States. And in many other areas where people learn how to do things, they see something demonstrated and they say, "Oh, I can do that." They're free. Okay. Then you come to the most interesting one, and that's ego power. Have you ever stroked your daughter's ego?
All the time.
Yeah. Does it work?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does.
I've done it more so with guys, though.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Women are good at stroking guys' ego because that's that's a male thing.
Yes,
Males love to have their ego stroked.
yes,
So when you stroke their ego and you say, "Oh, you did such a wonderful job on that. How about giving me a hand?" And they're free to do it, right?
yes.
Okay. So we've got information, expertise,
Mm-hmm.
personality, and ego. 4 freeing forms of power. And here's the most important one: moral power.
Moral power. Okay.
What is the right thing to do? And many people don't know what the right thing is to do.
Okay.
But if they know what the right thing is to do, people being humans the way they are, they will tend to do it. So, as a parent, your listeners out there who are parents, in your house, do the kids know what the rules are or do they have to learn them? So, as a parent, I like to have the rules posted. As a teacher, when I was a teacher, I went to the kids and I said, "What do you guys want the rules to be in this classroom?" And they look at me like I'm crazy. "Do you want us to tell you what the rules are?" "Yeah, I want to know what the rules are." "What do you want the rules to be in this classroom?" And I hand them 3 3 by 5 cards and they write 1 rule on each card. I get the cards, I sort them into common piles, and I paraphrase what's in each pile and I post the rules. The kids look up there and they say, "Oh, I wrote that. That's my rule. There's my rule. There's my rule," all around the classroom. The kids say, "Those are my rules." Moral power is in place.
Okay.
They know what the rules are. And when a rule is violated, I say, "Somebody's violating rule number 2." And they look up at rule number 2. And they look at the kid who's violating rule number 2. And guess what? The kid who's violating rule number 2 changes his behavior, her behavior. I didn't do anything
Mm-hmm.
because it's their rules. So the key to being a leader, and I don't care what your position is, you're a leader. Wow. Uh, Everybody listening out there in one way or another is a leader. The key to being a leader is how do you give control to people without giving it up? So as a teacher, as a parent, you give control to your kids, you give control to the students, you give control to everybody on the assembly line, but you cannot give it up. President Trump's a master at it. He gives control to people, but he's a control freak. When people don't do what they're supposed to do, he zaps them. He takes it back. Now, you might call that manipulation. There are times when I did not take control back. It's a judgment call.
Mm-hmm.
You accommodate. There are 5 ways to deal with conflict. Accommodation is a lose lose. You give someone what they want and you don't get anything out of it. So
Okay.
there are times as a human being when you can do that, particularly with your kids. With your kids, I've often accommodated them and got nothing, but I never gave up control.
Okay.
I chose not to control them. I
Okay.
just let it go. Okay. So those are the 5 freeing forms of power.
Okay.
Now, as a parent, you have position power, right? You are the mother.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. With position power, you get the ability to give rewards and punish, right? Okay. 3 controlling forms of power. Most males use the controlling forms of power
Okay.
with their associates, with their friends, with their females, with their wives, and so forth. When you try to control someone, it automatically creates resistance because people don't like to be in control. We get to the 5 basic needs of life. Control is one of them. There are very few people who do not want some control over their lives. Now, and there are control freaks who have to have control. So control varies across this spectrum from some control to a lot of control. But eventually, when you try to control somebody, they're going to resist you. And when they resist you, you're going to lose your leadership. There's a fascinating 4th form of controlling power. It's called connection power.
Connection.
Now, before your husband passed on to his greater reward, you and he were a team, right?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. And when you raised your kid, you and he had position power over this kid, right?
Correct.
Here's how connection power comes into that. Let's suppose one day your daughter did something you didn't like, and you said to her, "You know what you just did? I don't like that. And when your dad comes home, I'm going to tell him." You ever did it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so you go to your husband and you say, "You know what your daughter did today?" And you tell him. And he says, "I don't see what's so bad about that. I did that when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just let this pass." What happens to you and your position power with your daughter?
I'm demoted. I'm
Yep.
frustrated. I'm
Yep.
yes.
Yep. That's connection power.
Okay. Okay.
Very important to position power. So President Trump gets elected. He's got the support, connection power with the people, and he's trying to keep it with Twitter. And he does a pretty good job of it with Congress. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
President Obama lost connection power with Congress.
Okay.
And he said, "Well, the heck with you guys. I got this pen. I've got the executive position. I'm just going to ignore you guys and do what I want to do."
Mm-hmm.
But when you lose connection power, you lose position power.
Okay.
Those are the 9 forms of power.
Okay.
Then we get to, I guess, we can go back to the 5 basic communication skills, which is where a lot of men also lack. Where do you want to go from here?
Well, I want to know how men lose communication. So they're struggling with the 5 communication skills. I want to know what is that and how we can get to that part.
Most people have never thought about them.
Okay.
There are 5 basic communication skills. I went through that training at the University of Idaho back in the 70s, and I did my doctoral dissertation on openness, trust, and risk-taking. And the 5 basic communication skills are at the heart of openness and trust, okay? Because the way you communicate with other people determines whether they're going to be open to you, whether they're going to listen to you, whether they're going to trust you. Trust has 5 factors. We may not get into that, but let's go with the 5 basic communication skills. Here they are, and I'm going to rattle them off, and then I'll go back and we'll post a wall. Perception checking.
Perception checking.
Okay. Paraphrasing. Behavior description. Describing feelings, and giving and receiving feedback. Okay. Those are the 5.
Okay.
Let's start with paraphrasing.
Okay.
and I know you've done this. You haven't thought about it, but you've done it many times. Somebody says something to you, and you say, let me see if I understand what you just said. Have you done it?
Yes, quite often.
That's paraphrasing.
Okay.
And you give back to that person what you thought they said in your own words. And they say, oh, no, that's not what I meant to say. They say it again. And you come back and say, this is what I think you meant to say. And you paraphrase again. But what it conveys is, I care about what you're saying. I'm listening to you. I trust you. I'm open to you. I want a relationship with you. It's basic human relations, paraphrasing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. The next one is probably the one where males make the most mistakes. I'm a male and I see somebody do something and I think, oh God, what they just did. And you make a judgment, right? Because that's what we do as human beings.
Yes.
We see other people behave, do something, and we judge it, whether it's good or bad. But in our mind, the judgment's there and it affects our relationship with them. So behavior description would be, well, when I was an assistant principal, teachers would send me notes. Johnny has been very rude in class today. Judgment, right? Okay. I say, well, what did he do? Give me the behavior. So when I got that straightened out, I start getting reports back from the teachers about what the kids did, the behavior. And when the kid comes in and I say, what did you do? And the kid says, what do you mean? I says, well, the teacher's upset with you. What did you do? What behavior caused her to send you here? And I try to get the kid to describe the behavior. Once he describes, or she describes the behavior, I say, well, what do you think about that? I want them to be the judge of the behavior. Instead of me, instead of saying, that was a stupid thing to do.
Gotcha. Okay.
Do you want a paddling or you want to stay after school for detention?
Got you. Understood.
But once the kid says, yeah, I should not have done that. Once they accept the behavior, they make the judgment. So behavior description, your listeners out there, when they see somebody do something that they didn't like, they should go to that person and say, this is what I saw. This is what I heard. What do you think about that? And try to get them to make the judgment. Because as human beings, and particularly males, we make judgments every day, every hour of the day. We see people do things, and the judgment, our minds judge it, good or bad. And we're not always correct. Okay. But when you let them do it, it deflates. It deflates the conflict because the other person accepts what they did. Okay. Then you come to the next one, which is perception checking. Okay. Let's say you see somebody behave and your mind says, oh boy, what they just did. And you say to them, let me see if what I just saw is really correct. Well, just a minute ago, you had this big frown come across your face, and I think what I did upset you. Is that correct?
Okay.
And they say, oh no, I've got gas. And my stomach's upset. No, what you did had nothing to do with that frown. And on with the way we read behavior, we form perception. Sometimes they're correct, and sometimes they're not. But when you do a perception check, and again, it says, I'm open, I want to know, I want to understand, what did I do that caused that? And so forth. So it opens up communications. It opens up the trust. Okay.
Okay.
The fourth one is probably where most women are the worst. Of course, I've not been too good at that either. Describing your feelings.
Okay.
Um, a typical example, driving down the highway. The wife says, "You're driving too fast." "What do you mean I'm driving too fast? The speed limit's 65. I'm only going 60. "Well, you're driving too fast." Feelings. Everybody has feelings. Many times the feeling comes out as an expression of something. Whereas if she said, "The way you're driving is scaring me."
Okay.
"Oh, well, I sure didn't mean to do that. What do you want me to do?" "Just slow down a little bit." "Okay." You see how easy that is?
Mm-hmm.
Um, description of feelings is something, when you're upset, if you're with another person, a friend, and you describe your feelings, you throw the ball into their court and you let them accept your feelings and deal with it. And this whole thing that we're talking about, paraphrasing, perception checking, behavior description, and using it's always to throw the ball into the other court.
Okay.
So the other person has to uh, deal with whatever it is that you want to communicate rather than getting them upset, getting them defensive, and counterattacking. Okay.
Gotcha.
So then we get to the fifth one, which is very important. That is getting and receiving feedback. Because as a leader, as a mom with your daughter, you've countless times given her feedback, right? Okay. Well, there's a list in chapter 1 of book number 2 that gives all the rules for giving feedback. There's about 12. It should be immediate. It shouldn't be something that's happened way back when.
Okay.
The most important thing when you're giving somebody feedback, you say, "I've got something I want to say to you. Do you want to hear it?" "No, I don't want to hear it." "Okay, forget it." Because they don't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
I have, many times as a school superintendent, talked to teachers who were in trouble. And I said, "I've got something I need to share with you. Do you want to hear it?" Of course, I'm in a position of power. I don't think they've ever said, "No, I don't want to hear it." So they say, "Yes, I'd like to hear it." Open. They are open. Okay. So I share with them the data and I say, "What did you hear me say?" Paraphrase. Okay. And if they can repeat back to me what they think I said and it is accurate, we've got communication. We've had feedback.
Okay.
They understand what they did that was wrong and what I want fixed. And then I would say, "Well, what do you think my expectations are for you before you leave this office?"
Okay.
And I want them to tell me what they understand I expect of them. Okay. So that's giving feedback now. Getting feedback is the critical one. How do you get good feedback? I mean, with my 5 board members, did they tell me what I really needed to hear? Or did they tell me what they wanted from me? Did they say things that they wanted so that I would give them what they wanted?
Gotcha.
Did they give me honest feedback?
Okay.
In many cases, you do not get honest feedback from your bosses, from the people who are over you, because they want a relationship with you and they don't tell you what you need to hear. Okay. Here's how I dealt with that. Here's the way to get honest feedback. Okay. It's called force field analysis. Force field analysis.
Force field analysis. Okay.
And the guy who came up with this is Curt Lewin, Kurtlewin. Back in the 50s, he came up with this crazy system to identify what are the forces out there that are causing my organization or me to not be effective, and which forces should I focus on. He had a system of ranking and rating that is just very difficult. Okay, I spent a week going through this force field analysis at the University of Idaho back in the 70s. Here's a very simplified version of it. Okay, it's so easy to use and so easy to use. Okay, I have a piece of paper, an 8 by 11 sheet. At the top, I put, complete these 2 sentences as often as you wish. Okay. First sentence. When I was a teacher, Dr. Bulach, I wasn't a doctor back then, Mr. Bulach is a good teacher because. Complete that sentence as often as you wish. The force is for my being a good teacher, right? Okay. All the kids are free. I give them the sheet of paper. Second sentence is, Mr. Bulach would be a better teacher if things I'm doing that are not making me a good teacher, forces against. So I appoint a student in the classroom. When you guys are finished, hand all your sheets over to Susan, and I'll be outside the door and have her come out and give them to me. So I leave the classroom. When I was a principal, I did the same thing to the teachers. Mr. Bulach is a good principal because he'd be a better principal if. When I was a school superintendent, Dr. Bulach is a good superintendent because he'd be a better superintendent if. When I was a college professor, I did the same thing. The feedback I got is honest. Now you're going to get, if you ever do this, and your listeners, if you ever do this, you're going to get people who love you. They're going to have all these glowing things about you're good because. Throw that away. You're going to get people who hate you, and they're going to have nothing good to say about you. Throw that away. The ones in between who say you're good because, and they write some things, and you'd be better if, that's what you want to look at. Now you have got a perfect plan on what you're going to do next year to improve your leadership.
Okay.
It is the most effective way to get good feedback that I have ever run across.
All right. Force field analysis. Mm-hmm. I was just, while you were talking, I was thinking that you could use this in the family structure, but when you were saying throw away the good and the bad, a laughing thought came to my mind. It's probably not good for a parent to do this around the holidays because the kids are going to write all the good stuff about my parents.
Actually, I've used it with marriage counseling too.
Okay.
When a couple is having difficulty, I would say, okay, I want you guys to complete this force field analysis. My wife is good because my wife would be better if. The woman, my husband is good because he'd be better if. Once I've got that data, I know how to interact with them because they've given me honest data. But when you sit down and talk with them, they hear the other one listening. They don't tell you. They don't want to offend the other person, so they don't tell you what's really on their mind. But when they sit down by themselves with this sheet of paper, my wife is good because my wife would be good. It's usually pretty honest data.
Now, I have time for one more question, and
Sure.
you brought up the marriage topic. And one of the things that I find relationships across the board, married or not, struggle with is conflict resolution. And we already know that men and women have a different communication style. So what do you suggest when difficult times come, trials and tribulations come? What is the most effective way to do conflict resolution?
There are 5 conflict styles.
Okay.
Each one has a win or a lose.
Okay.
Competitive style, I win, you lose. Collaborative style, win-win. Compromise, lose-lose. Accommodate, I lose, you win. Now the crazy thing about marriages is avoidance is a fifth style. There are times, which I have learned over the years, when a conflict comes up, I want to solve it. I'm one of those.
Men are fixers. Let's take care of the problem.
I'm a fixer.
Yeah.
Men are from Mars and
Yeah.
from Venus or whatever that thing. The older I get, the more I realize if I just avoid a conflict, sometimes it just goes away. Because people are human. You have a bad day and something happens and you make an issue of it and it becomes conflict. You let it go. So there are 4 ways to avoid a conflict. How much time we got?
Go ahead. We can go do this.
Okay. Avoiding conflicts is fascinating. Okay. The broken record is one I've used many times. When I went to the teachers and I said, what rules do you want to have at this school? And they gave me the rules like I did with the students. What rules do you want in the classroom? One of the rules that almost always came up is if somebody comes in late, don't attack the entire faculty and tell us, you guys need to come in on. Go to the person who's not coming in on time and deal with them. So, as a principal, that always happened. So when a teacher came in late, I would say, you're supposed to check in at 7:15, but you don't understand. On the way to work, to check in 7:15. Yep, check in 7:15. Check it. No matter what they said, I did not get into anything. I just broken recorded. And after about the 5th time, I said, check in at 7:15. They left, but they got the message. I did the same thing with my kids. Curfew was 12 o'clock. When they took the car and went out on their date or whatever they were doing, they came in at 12:15. I said, curfew is 12 o'clock and you came in at 12:15. But Dad, curfew is 12 o'clock. Dad, curfew is 12 o'clock. And I never let them get anything in. They finally got the message. That's the broken record. Okay, here's 2 others that are powerful. Let's say you screw up and do something wrong. And somebody comes up and says to you, you know what you just did? That's the stupidest thing I ever saw. It's called negative assertion. Negative assertion. You're right. I screwed up. Bingo. Where are they going to go with that?
You deflated the bubble.
Yep. Well, let's suppose they say, that was the stupidest thing I ever saw anybody do. And you say, the next one is negative inquiry. You say, well, what would you suggest that I should have done that would have made that better? Negative assertion, negative inquiry, broken record. And then you come to the 4th one. This is chapter 2 and book number 2. The ways to deal with conflict. It's called fogging.
Flogging.
Fogging. F-O-G-G-I-N-G. And I took a seminar back in the 1980s in Philadelphia where it was a conflict management seminar. And they came up with that word. And I don't know where it ever came from, but here's how it goes. Let's say somebody comes up and insults you. They say, that's the stupidest looking mustache I've ever seen on somebody, or that's the stupidest looking tie, or why in the world are your pants sagging like that, or why this, or why that, and they kind of insult you, okay? And you say, well, you could say that. That's possible. You don't say, what do you mean? You don't take it on. Remember the incident when Trump was talking with that young kid who was a reporter and they were talking about how to treat women?
Oh, yeah, yes. Mm-hmm.
If he had fogged that, instead of saying, where did you get that? Where'd you get that information? You know, when he was
Mhm.
confronted with that, he took it on. He should have said, that was the stupidest thing I ever did. Or he said, well, I suppose somebody who's stupid would say that, but you never agree. When you fog, you never agree with the accusation.
Okay.
You fog it. You faint it.
Okay.
Don't get sucked in. Um, where do you want to go from here?
Well, right now I want to go to, because we're at our 30 minutes, and I could go on more because you have so much information, but I want to make sure everybody knows you have quite a few titles out there for them to read. Where do they pick up your books at, and how do they connect with you? Because you have, so, like I said, you have so much information to give. So how do they connect with you?
Well, both the books are basically when I got the contract to evaluate every school district in West Virginia, I asked them, what do you like about your school? What don't you like about your school? I found out that everything was human relations oriented. It was the human relations that were causing the problems in our schools. So I wrote the two books. There are chapters in there that are basically human relations. They're valuable for anybody, but they are designed for how to develop an effective school where kids like to go to school, where teachers don't quit in years 3 to 5. And so there's two books. The first book describes how to create the school. The second book um, describes how to enhance it, and it's got the conflict resolution. It's got a whole lot of exercises on how to improve levels of openness and trust, how to reduce bullying behavior, and the first book, uh, the chapter on power is number 4. That's that's for anybody. I don't care what your role is. What are the 9 forms of power? Which ones should you use? Should you always go to controlling forms of power? No. You should always go to the freeing forms first. And when they don't work, you take it back. So um, basically, um, what's what's wrong with our society is we have all of these self-serving people, these self-serving politicians that get in office to self-serve. They came in wanting to serve the people who voted them in, but after they're there a few years, they become self-serving. This Nancy Pelosi is one of the most self-serving females I've ever seen. Chuck Schumer, self-serving as all get out, and on with the politicians. Uh, People say that Trump is self-serving. What does he say? I want to make America great again. I gave up all my money, my job. I'm serving the citizens. His actions say he's self-serving, but many people believe he's an egomaniac who is self-serving. And I'll let the listeners judge for themselves, which one he is, because we all have our beliefs. Um, the role of people in this world is to serve others. That's what the Bible says. We are servant leaders with Jesus being the greatest servant leader who gave his life. The crazy thing is, being self-serving is not bad because you can't serve others until you serve self. The analogy I use in my book is an apple tree. What's the role of the apple tree to produce apples, right? If the apple tree isn't healthy, doesn't have good soil and good nutrition and so forth, it can't produce apples. And for you, the same thing is if you're not healthy, if I'm not healthy, I cannot serve others. So take care of yourself. But you got to remember that your role in life is you need to do that so you can serve others. And that's my final message.
Thank you. So is there a website or anything? Somebody
Oh,
can.
yeah. Yeah. Everything on my website's free.
Okay.
The books are there, all of the articles, the manuscripts. There's 6 surveys there that measure levels of openness and trust, that measure leadership behavior, that measure bullying behavior, that measure character education, and so forth. All of that stuff is free. Do you have the website?
Yeah, I have it. I will put it up when we post the video, so I have it all.
Okay.
There you go. Well,
Okay.
that's it. We have come to the end today. I got I have like pages of notes I was taking here. I thank you so much for hanging out with me, and happy early birthday.
Hey, it's been a pleasure being on your show.
Thank you, thank you. You have a good one.
You're a
And
very nice person.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So are you. You have a good one. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Oh.